Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patience. We would now like to start the International Symposium on Sustainability Science toward a Sustainable and Resilient Society. I will be serving as the moderator for today's symposium. I am from University of Tokyo IR3S. My name is Fukushi. Very nice to meet you all.
Good morning and welcome. My name's David Malone and I have the privilege of working here at the UN University. I'm going to be quite brief because I'd like the conference, if possible, to stay ahead of schedule rather than falling behind schedule. Although in Japan, you're better at scheduling than I think anybody else, so I shouldn't worry in that regard. A few things to say at the outset. I'm delighted this conference is meeting here at UNU. It follows on some other very interesting international activity on the science of sustainability yesterday at the University of Tokyo's new campus out at Chiba, which I was privileged to participate in. And I'm delighted that the topic has so much resonance in our host country, Japan. Obviously, science is tremendously important. For those of us who care about science, we think this is self-evident. But actually, it's not obvious that most people have a deep attachment to science, if by science we mean attachment to evidence. Indeed, the field of the environment, of sustainability, is one that is buffeted by emotions around the world. We all feel very strongly about the environment, and often these feelings get the better of our thoughts. That is why science is so tremendously important in this area. Many of those most active on the environment, and admirably so in many ways, are driven by a sense of purpose, a sense of urgency, but not always a respect for the evidence. And that is why the emergence of the sustainability, the science of sustainability as an academic discipline is quite important, it seems to me. The three major presentations today are on very interesting topics. The first, relating to the limits of growth, is an important and controversial one. It's easy in a country like my own, Canada, or in Japan for that matter, with fairly flat demographics, fairly flat growth, economic growth, to recognize possible limits to growth. For poor countries still seeking to develop, it's much harder to accept that limits to growth could be established for the purpose of achieving greater sustainability. That particular equilibrium is nowhere near being reached in terms of an international consensus. So continuing to inform ourselves, continuing to be creative on the trade-off, in effect, between economic growth and sustainability will be very important in years ahead, and not only in relation to the headline issue of climate change today. The linkages between science and policy are always somewhat tenuous. Occasionally, politicians will be moved by scientific breakthroughs, but overwhelmingly, politicians are constrained within their parliaments and tend to do what is most convenient, which is often nothing. So scientists have a great deal of work cut out for themselves to make a convincing case for their evidence. And that is not always the reality, because many scientists are much more comfortable in the laboratory and in classrooms than in making a case publicly for their evidence and advocating for it. So this remains a challenge, because in the policy world, do nothing is the default position. Finally, international collaboration and, in effect, the spread of adherence to the science of sustainability is just at its beginnings. So meetings of the type we have here, I hope, have a role to play. It may be a modest role, but without the sort of intermediation that is planned for today and which participants can carry forward to other forums, we simply will not make much progress on the interface between science and policy in the field of sustainability. It gives me great pleasure to see amongst our colleagues today an ally of UNU at UNESCO, Gretchen Kalonji. Gretchen, welcome amongst us. And through you, I'd like to salute UNESCO's role in highlighting sustainability, of course, but also the importance of the science of sustainability in the important work you do and your colleagues do more widely on science. So thank you for championing this field and being a terrific partner to us. We'd also like to thank, of course, the Japanese National Commission for UNESCO, which is also an ally on this issue and very important to us, as is the Ministry of Environment in Japan. And we're very fortunate to have the Vice Minister with us this morning, as he so often is in our life here in Tokyo. Finally, I'd like to pay tribute to the University of Tokyo, which is forging a trail in highlighting the science of sustainability in its world of disciplines and subdisciplines. We're very fortunate at UNU to have Professor Kazuhiko Takeuchi as our Senior Vice Rector. He has a foot still firmly planted in the University of Tokyo, where he is a leading figure in the field of sustainability and has championed the science of sustainability. It is also through his tireless advocacy that we've been able to reorient our master's program towards being a jointly taught one with the University of Tokyo, which we believe is hugely to the benefit of our master's students and may be of some benefit also to the University of Tokyo at a time when Japanese universities are seeking to extend their global connection. Thank you all very much for joining us this morning, and I wish you well in the important deliberations you'll have. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miyama. So from Rector Malone, you've mentioned the limit to the gross. That was the main topic. So back in 1972, from Clubber Room, initially presented the idea there is a limit to the gross. Prior to that, we initially thought there is an unlimited growth for the Earth. But it is the first time Clubber Rome have won the world that there is limit to growth. So it was quite innovative in that sense. And since then, we have never really came out with a firm resolution. Of course, that has been a consistent theme for us. And of course, it has been the theme for all of you as well. So recently, of course, we have the flyer, Beyond the Limit to Growth. We have a brochure under that title. And actually, I published a book under that title. So I would just like to provide you with a brief introduction to the book that I recently published. The key point is the Club of Rome. What exactly was their message? What sort of warning have they announced? And what is the sort of society that we live in? And we are indeed in the transition point for the human history. So my message is we need to be aware, we need to be conscious that we do stand at this turning point for the human history as a whole. So the vision, it is indeed a transition from quantity to quality. I think in essence that is the message. So I am proposing this idea of platinum society as a new vision. In order to achieve this, it is absolutely essential that we have innovation. That is the gist of my presentation. So what exactly marks the turning point? What exactly is the milestone of the human history? It is, well, first of all, we have the Industrial Revolution and what happened after that. So in the vertical axis shows the per capita GDP. So of course this is on a normalized basis, a per capita GDP of a country normalized by that of the world. So that is dotted in the vertical axis. So of course we have the developed world for Japan, UK, US, and so forth. So it is in the scale of 3.0, 4.0, and so forth. So that means in comparison to the average, the GDP is 3 times or maybe 4 times more in comparison to the average. That is how we should read this chart. So, of course, at the poorest phase of the human history, it was only 1/10 of the world average. So the biggest disparity, we've seen 50 folds of difference. This is the difference between the developing world as opposed to the developed world. If you go back 1,000 years back from now, approximately all the countries were trending about the same level because the industry is almost agriculture solely. So it was really to fill the mouths of people. It is to live and to eat. And therefore, the amount of the food that is consumed by individuals is pretty much the same. And therefore, there was not much disparity back then. There was not much of a differential between rich and the poor. But where we start to see the differences after the Industrial Revolution. So the agriculture productivity, for instance, now it is 1,000 times more than what it used to be. So, of course, these countries that had gone through Industrial Revolution started with Britain and, of course, Europe. And, of course, we have North America, Australia. And these have become much more richer and much more developed. Hence, they became the developed world. The remainder, the Asia, Africa, and all these have become colonies or they are in a quasi-colonial state. So basically, Industrial Revolution had made this divide between the rich as opposed to the poor. However, trends have changed in the past 20 years or so. You could see that the developed world, their index has been dropping in the past 20 years quite drastically. It is not that the developed world's GDP is dropping, but it's actually the global average has been rising, for instance, led by China and India. So Industrial Revolution had really widened the divide, and now we are seeing a rise of the developing world. Why is that? It is because of the industrialization. It is indeed equivalent to Industrial Revolution. So basically, this Industrial Revolution has disseminated all over the world. And because of that, in comparison to 1,000 years back, on a material basis, we are much more affluent, 1,000 times more. So we are again trending towards more of a normalized state, just as we have done 1,000 years back. So from that perspective, we are going through a fairly unique time of the human history. To put in another